Hello and welcome everyone. Thank you very much for tuning in. This is a screencast-matic presentation and recording for the part of the lesson that has us looking at the geography, history, and culture of South Korea. Before we get started, please let me encourage you to open up to today's lesson, scroll down the correct section, and get ready to answer the key concept questions and exercises that coincide with the reading. Please remember that you can replay any part of this presentation for detailed clarity or repetition later on. Let's go ahead and get started. An introduction. Welcome to South Korea. South Korea is a country in East Asia. It occupies the southern half of the Korean peninsula. For many centuries, Korea was a single country. However, after the Korean War in the 1950s, Korea was divided into two countries, North Korea and South Korea. Geography. South Korea only shares a land border with North Korea. Much of the eastern and southern portion of the country is dominated by low mountains. The western part is mostly covered in plains. Jeju Island, located south of South Korea, is the country's largest island. Nature. South Korea is a populous country, so there are no large natural habitats. The government has designated 20 national parks across the country to protect its wildlife. Most animal species inhabit the remote mountainous regions. The most common mammal species include deer and rabbits. People. The vast majority of South Korean population are ethnic Koreans. South Korea has urban society with about 80% of the people living in cities. Most cities are crowded, and people often live in high-rise apartments. Economy. South Korea is a developed country and has a strong economy. Most of the country's wealth comes from manufacturing and service industries, such as electronic firms and banking. The most famous export products of the country include cars, ships, computers, and other electronics. Government. The official name of South Korea is the Republic of Korea. The government of the country does not recognize North Korea as an independent state and claims the entire Korean peninsula. The South Korean government is led by a president who is elected for a term of 5 years. At this time, you may proceed to answer the key concept questions and exercises. Once you're finished, you may resume this presentation. Geography. South Korea is situated on the southern part of the Korean peninsula. The peninsula is 750 miles long and is situated in the easternmost part of Asia. South Korea only shares a land border with North Korea. It borders the Sea of Japan and borders to the east of the Yellow Sea to the west. About 70% of South Korea is covered in hills and low mountains, especially the eastern and southern parts. The Taebaek Mountains run along the east coast of the country and run into North Korea. The Subbaek Mountains cover much of the south. The rugged slopes of the eastern side slopes into the plains and lowlands of western South Korea. The flat area accounts for about 1/3 of the country's land, and it is the most populous region of the country and is also home to many farmlands because of its fertile soil. The coastlines of South Korea and western South Korea are home to over 3,000 islands. Jeju Island off the southern coast is the largest island. It is home to the country's highest point too, Mount Halla, at an altitude of 6,398 feet. It is an active volcano, but it hasn't erupted in many centuries. A volcano is classified as active if it has been erupted in the last 10,000 years. The Han, Naknong, and Niguem are the most notable rivers, and the Naknong River is the longest river with 320 miles. It flows to several major cities, including Busan and Daegu. At this time, you may move on to answer the next set of key concept questions and complete the next series of exercises. You may then resume the presentation to go to the next section. Let's begin the next section. Culture. Korean culture started to develop when the first nomadic tribes moved to the Korean peninsula thousands of years ago. Korean culture is heavily influenced by Chinese culture in terms of Chinese religion, inventions, medicine, and even the writing system. However, the Chinese writing system was replaced by a Korean Hangul system in the late 20th century. Since North and South Korea have become independent countries, South Korean culture has been heavily influenced by the West. The government system and the open economy has changed the way Korean people live. Religion. Just over half of South Korean population is not religious. The most dominant religious among the people that are religious are Buddhism and Christianity. About 20% of the Korean people identify themselves as Protestant, and 15% are Buddhist, and 8% are Catholic. Protestantism was introduced in the country in the late 1900s by American missionaries. Historically, Confucianism, a philosophy that originated in ancient China, was dominant in Korean society. The values and beliefs of Confucianism are still part of Korean society today. The main values of Chinese philosophy include the importance of family and social harmony, Confucianism is considered a philosophy and not a religion, as it has no god. Clothing. The hanbok is the Korean national costume. It dates back to the days of the Three Kingdoms about 1,600 years ago. It typically consists of a blouse or jacket called a jorguri and a skirt, shima, for the women, or loose pants, baji, for the men. The dress is mostly worn during national holidays and other special occasions. There are many different designs and colors. Historically, the clothes of the upper class were made of bright colors which indicated the person's social status. Plastic surgery. South Koreans have the highest rate of plastic surgery in the world. Over 20% of women between 20 and 49 years have undergone some form of cosmetic surgery. There are more than 4,000 plastic surgery clinics. A quarter of all such procedures in the world takes place in South Korea, and most Koreans who undergo cosmetic surgery see it as a way to improve their life. They believe it increases their chances of getting married and getting a promotion at work. K-pop. K-pop stands for Korean pop, and it is a popular musical genre among teenagers throughout Asia. The songs usually have a variety of cool beats, catchy music, and synchronized dance movements. Most K-pop artists are good-looking and have amazing dance skills. Taekwondo. Taekwondo is traditional Korean martial arts, and this is a combat sport focuses not just on physical skills but also on the mind. It has constantly developed throughout Korea's 5,000-year history. The sport has never stopped developing and is now a modern and popular martial art all over the world. At this time, you may proceed to answer the next set of key concept questions and complete the exercises that correspond to that reading. Once you're finished, you may resume to the presentation to go on to the next section. Let's proceed to go on to the next section. Food. Korean cuisine originated from the country's culture, environment, and climate. However, many of the ingredients of Korean cuisine can also be found in traditional Chinese and Japanese cuisine. A traditional Korean meal consists of rice, a soup, kimchi, and a wide variety of smaller dishes on the side. Every person at a Korean dinner gets his or her own bowl of rice and soup. Everything else is shared. Korean side dishes are also called banchan, and the dishes are set at the middle class and table and are shared. They are served in small portions, and some of the most common side dishes include kimchi, spicy cucumber, soybean sprouts, and seasoned spinach. Kimchi is one of the most iconic Korean dishes. It is a spicy and sour dish prepared with salted and fermented cabbage and various spices. Korean people eat their dishes with chopsticks. However, unlike most other Asian countries, Koreans use metal chopsticks instead of wooden ones. The reason dates back to its ancient history, and it is believed that the Korean royalty used silver chopsticks in order not to be poisoned. They believed that silver would change color when there was any poison in their meal, so ordinarily began using metal chopsticks, as they could not afford silver, but still wanted to look wealthy and powerful. Over here are some examples of Korean foods. Here we have bibimbap, and bibimbap is a bowl of rice with mixed ingredients, including mixed vegetables, mushrooms, beef, and egg. Additionally, we have gogiju, and gogiju is a traditional type of Korean barbecue. It is typically eaten with a group of people around a grill. Most meats are thinly sliced and are marinated. Next we have haejanguk, and haejanguk, or hango soup, is a soup prepared with vegetables and a beef broth. Down here is gimbap, and gimbap is a seaweed rice roll with a variety of fillings such as seasoned vegetables, egg, and meat. It is the most popular on-the-go meal in Korea. Down here is japchae, and japchae is a dish prepared with glass, noodles, vegetables, and meat. It is topped with sesame oil and soy sauce, and japchae can also be served as a banchan. At this time, you may proceed to answer the next set of key concept questions and complete the exercises that correspond with this reading. And then you may proceed to the final part of the reading and presentation on attractions. Let's proceed to the final part of the reading on attractions. Cheongtodong Palace. Cheongtodong Palace is located in the center of Seoul. It is one of the 5 grand palaces in the city. It was built during the Joseon dynasty between 1418 and 1450 AD. The palace served as the residence of the royal family. Next here is Jeju Island. Jeju Island is the largest volcanic island of Korea, and it is located just 40 miles south of the Korean peninsula. The island is a very popular destination for tourists and is famous for its pleasant climate, scenic beaches, waterfalls, and caves. Down here is the demilitarized zone. When the Korean War officially ended in 1953, Korea was separated into two parts. The border between these two parts is known as the Demilitarized Zone, or the DMZ, and it is 1.25 miles wide. The site has been a major tourist attraction because of its historical importance. Many tourists are fascinated by the diversity between the two countries, which could be seen at the place. The joint security area, which can be seen in the picture, is used to hold negotiations between the two nations. Up here to the right is Namdaemun. The Namdaemun is also known as the Sungyumnyeon, and it is one of the 8 gates of the fortress wall of Seoul. The wall and the gates were built during the Joseon dynasty in the 14th century and surround the city. Down here is Muncheon Hanok village. Hanok villages are restored and preserved ancient neighborhoods. They can be found across the country and provide a unique opportunity to experience what life was like in Korea centuries ago. Muncheon Hanok village is situated in Seoul and features over 400 traditional Korean houses called Hanok. And down here is Gyeongbokgung Palace. The Gyeongbokgung Palace is located in Seoul and was the main residence of the kings of the Joseon dynasty. The palace was built in 1395 and has 7,700 rooms. During the Japanese invasion, between 1592 and 1598, the palace was destroyed by a fire, and during the reign of King Gojong, 1852 to 1919, the palace was restored. So there you guys have it. That's everything I want you to know for this lesson in terms of the history, geography, and culture of South Korea. Once again, you can replay any part of this presentation for detail or clarity later on. Good luck in completing the rest of the lesson.